Hey there, my name is Chris Acton with Acton Creative, and this is A Handwoven Experience. In today's episode, I am proud to bring you a weaving repair compilation. You see, friends, a project is going to go sideways. Something will happen at some point in your weaving journey where things don't go as planned, and things will break, and you'll have to repair things. And over the last how many years, I've published a number of short form little nuggets about different types of repairs that you might come in contact with, that you might need. So I thought it'd be helpful to put it all in one video so you have it in one single place to be like, hey, I've broken a thread, what do I do? Hit play and off you go. You see, because we are all gonna have things go badly, it's nothing to fear. It's nothing to be freaked out about. You just have to have the information for how to fix it and move on. And that's what I'd like to bring you today. In our compilation, I'm including how to put together your very own weaving repair kit, because it's important to have some tools at the ready. Also, how to create a repair heddle. Ooh, those are very valuable. What to do when you break a warp thread. And lastly, how to deal with some unwanted knots. Yep. Are you checking things off? You're like, yep, that's happened. Yep, it's gonna happen. I'm gonna be ready for all of those scenarios. So without further ado, friends, let's cue it up and enjoy your weaving repair compilation. Hey there, it's Chris with Acton Creative, and this is A Handwoven Experience. And in today's episode, I'm gonna tell you about the weaving repair kit. Yep, every weaver should have one. Now, I must admit that the items that are in my kit aren't all centrally located in one position, but they are all close to my loom and handy in case the worst case happens. Because you know it's gonna. At some point, something's gonna break, something's gonna come unloose, something is gonna need some attention. And so we need a weaving repair kit handy for us. So let's start with the really easy and obvious stuff, shall we? You need some scissors. At this point, I kind of figure I should just have a little holster on my hip where I just carry them around all the time, look like a cowboy or something. You need scissors, always. You also need some kind of measuring device. I love a measuring tape, but there are times when yardstick or ruler are also just as handy, right? You're gonna need some scrap yarn. Boy, it's amazing how often I use just a little bit. I just need a 6-inch length of scrap yarn for something. Scrap yarn. You're also gonna need some pins. Now, you don't need a whole Mac Daddy. This is like for a quilter or something, but at least have some pins. You don't need a whole bunch, but some. I recommend both straight and safety pins, both types, because there's times when a safety pin is really what you need, and other times when a straight pin is just easier. So have some pins handy. To go along with that, you're gonna need some needles. This is like the biggest needle I could find. It's enormous. And you probably don't need the one this big, but maybe a couple sizes of needles. Because there are moments when you're gonna need to work that yarn back into the fabric and hide it. And a needle's perfect for that. So have a couple different sizes, smaller than this. You're also gonna need, well, we're gonna need some tools. Even though we are not mechanics, we work on looms, and looms are mechanical. Therefore, we need tools. So I recommend screwdrivers, both a flathead and a Phillips. Because the screws on your loom may vary, I find that I need to tighten up the screws on my bench quite often, as well as on my table loom. The floor loom's pretty good, but for the floor loom, let me tell you about the tools I need for that. I always have my pliers handy for that. So here's what's so funny. Here's my story to go with the pliers. So on my floor loom, on the beater bar that holds the reed, right? In the middle of summer, if the wood swells at all, those little screws are almost impossible to unscrew just using my hands. So I'm like, okay, it's August. I need my pliers. So I pull out the pliers and I get in there and try to loosen up those screws. So you need tools. Even if you have never fixed a thing in your life, if you own a loom, you're gonna have to fix some things on occasion. So have some tools, my friends. All right, you are also gonna need a few extras. That's what I recommend. I recommend having a few extra heddles, right? Whatever kind of heddles you have, just have a few extra that are handy. You probably do not need the 50 that are on my little holder here, but you need some. So have, I don't know, have a dozen handy that you can put into your loom if you miscount something, because I would like to think that we're always so exact that we never miscount, but it's not life. In real life, well, on occasion we just miscount. So have heddles handy. But to go with that, you also are gonna want some repair heddles. Look at that, dude. Now, let me kind of explain the difference. These heddles are, oh, I'm all tangled. These heddles are for when you can gracefully add some to your shafts, like when you're just putting the project through the loom, you're just dressing your loom right in the beginning. This guy here is for when you've realized you've messed up. The whole loom is dressed, you've started the project, and you're like, oh crap, I need to add a thread right in the middle on shaft 2. Thus, the repair heddle. Now, if you haven't seen a repair heddle before, I did a whole episode about it. I'll include a link in the description and you can go check it out. They're very easy to make. It's just a safety pin at both ends, and then I make myself a little eye right in the middle. Works like a charm. And I recommend have, I don't know, 4 or 5 of these ready to go. Because I feel like it's kind of like Murphy's Law, is that if you have the heddles ready to go, you more than likely won't have challenges. However, the minute you don't have any heddles ready, you're like, oh, okay, I need to put a yarn right in the middle of my project and I need a repair heddle to do it. So just make yourself a few repair heddles. They'll come in handy at those weird moments when things go sideways. I also recommend some extra tie-ups. This is a tie-up for my floor loom. So a tie-up which connects the treadles to the lambs to the shafts. So as you're putting all the pieces together, have a couple extra tie-ups ready for your floor loom. Or if you're working on a table loom, have some cord ready. Some just, like this kind of cord you get at the hardware store. Because there are times that just that motion of moving your levers up and down over and over again, they're gonna fray over time and snap. And they usually snap at the worst possible moment. Let me just tell you from experience. So have some cord ready that you can kind of fashion yourself a little tie-up, either for your floor loom or your table loom, either one. And lastly, have some weights. These are my weights. These are old film canisters, which of course, you have to be over a certain age to even know what it is. But I have film canisters with just a few coins in them, just like this. If you're not as old as I am, or you have no idea what I'm talking about, just use some prescription bottles. They're very handy. It has the same thing. So you can put a few coins or some kind of weight in there, snap the top on, and then you can attach your yarn to it to weight off the back of your loom. So, have a couple of these. I had a project recently where I broke 3 yarns all in the span of just a couple hours. So have a few of these ready to go for when the worst happens. So that is my list. That is my kind of collection of items that I always keep near me just in case things go badly, because we're all gonna have those days. What is in your weaving repair kit? What am I missing? What kind of things do you have always around you, near your loom, near your yarn, that you can access in case things break or get loose or whatever goes wrong? So let me know in the comments what else I should be including in my weaving repair kit. And I'll include the whole list for you so you can check it out. And if you don't have one, you can create your own weaving repair kit. I hope that helps. Have a great week, my friends. Happy weaving. Hey, it's Chris with Acton Creative, and this is A Handwoven Experience, episode 58. This episode is dedicated to the repair heddle. So, you've spent hours and hours, and your loom is finally dressed. It's a big win. So before you start weaving though, you want to check to see if everything's in the right place. So you're looking around and you realize that you have one yarn right in the middle that's in the wrong heddle. Okay, We've all been there, first of all. Heddles are kind of funny little things. Mine are silver, they don't have to be, but these silver pieces that hang out on each of the shafts of my loom. But once they slide onto these rails, you can't just easily take them off and on. So for me to repair one yarn in the middle, I would have to undo all of the other yarns. Maybe not the best option, huh? So you have a couple choices here. First, you could leave it. I know, does that hurt you? Okay, but that is an option. You could leave that little anomaly right there in the middle. It'll add character. And it's all about a learning process anyways. But if that's giving you the willies and you're already breaking out in hives, I have a good option for you. Number 2 is to use a repair heddle. Remember how I talked about how the heddles, it's kind of hard to take them on and off? Well, I am going to show you how to make a very easy makeshift little clip-in heddle so that you can change just that one yarn without having to undo and redo all of the rest. It's easy enough. I'll show you how to do it. All right, let's make a repair heddle. So we're going to start with an actual heddle. This is just one that I would use on my loom. This is going to give us an idea of scale. This is a repair heddle that I already have, just to kind of remind me of what I am aiming for. And to go with that then, I have 2 safety pins that are going to be the top and the bottom. And I have a piece of yarn. You'll notice that my yarn is pink, which is not my favorite, but I like to find ways to use it. So repair heddle, that's pretty perfect. So you start with a piece of yarn. I would recommend something like a cotton or a wool that's not going to break easily at all. And what you want to do then is measure, mine's about 22 inches. And what I would say is measure your actual heddle, double the size and add about 2 inches. You can always trim it off if you don't need it. Okay, so I've got my yarn here. I just doubled it. See how I just, I've got the ends and then I've got the loop at one side. So here I'm going to start. I'm going to pick up my safety pin and I'm just going to take my little loop through the little loop in the safety pin, ironically enough. I put that through that and then I'm going to pull the yarn through. So that's all we're going to do to the top of the repair heddle. Now I'm going to kind of lay it down next to my actual heddle here just to give me a gauge of how many inches I need. And looks like right about there is the top of the eye. That's what we're going to do next, is make 2 knots that actually will be the knot. So I'm going to start here and I am just going to make a square knot here, which is kind of over, around and through, and then you just repeat that. So you have a nice, there we go, nice square knot. Okay, let's lay this back down, see where we are. All right. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so now we need to make the bottom of the eye. So that's where our next knot is gonna go. Okay, now I want you to keep in mind that these are repair heddles. These are not meant to be exactly what your heddles are like in the loom, because a repair heddle's sole job is to be able to clip on randomly in your project without having to undo and redo everything. That's the whole job. So it does not have to be perfect. So do not stress if things don't appear exactly the same way they are in your heddle. Okay, so we have the top is connected. We have our little eye now. See that? We've done 2 knots, which give us an eye right there in the middle. And now we just need to finish it up by attaching it to our safety pin at the bottom. Okay, I want to be, let's see, right about there, I think. And I am going to kind of thread my yarns through that nice little hole in the safety pin. And then what I'm going to recommend is that we kind of come around the back and knot it. That's what I'm thinking. So we'll come around like this. We'll do another square knot just to keep it in place. Let's see, there's one, and we'll do another part of the knot right there, just so it doesn't move it around. Okay, So ta-da, we have just created a repair heddle. Now, trim these little guys if they seem particularly long because we added extra inches as we were starting the whole process. But this repair heddle now is ready to go into whatever shaft you need to add or to move your warp yarn, whatever you need. That's all there is to it. So we have our repair heddle ready to go. Now we just have to attach it to the correct shaft. I would recommend that you put your foot on the shaft that you need access to just so it lifts up. It's just going to be easier to get in there. Pull the beater bar forward towards you. Take your repair heddle. The beauty, of course, is that it has safety pins that will clip and unclip, and then it has an eye in the middle, just like a regular heddle. So lean over here, clip your safety pin to the bottom, undo the top, clip it to the top, and this will slide around just like a regular heddle. Pull your problem child yarn out of wherever it was, put it through the eye here, and you are ready to go. It is just that easy. So hopefully then, in the future, when something goes a little funky somewhere in the project that's not right in the end, you won't panic, you'll be ready. You'll have your repair heddles on standby and all will be right with the world. And you can get back to weaving in no time. So that is the episode for the week. I hope that repair heddles become a part of your regular toolbox and that you are feeling better about those little threading errors that might happen right in the middle of the project. All right, my friends, have a great week and happy weaving. Hello, my friends. It's Chris with Acton Creative, and this is A Handwoven Experience, episode 52. And in this episode, we're going to talk about replacing a warp yarn. Yep, we've all had those bad days when we're weaving along and all of a sudden we hear a little ping or a give in the fabric. Something happens that alerts you that all is not right in weaving land. So you look down, you see, yep, warp yarn is broken. But don't panic. I repeat, do not panic. It'll be okay. I'm going to walk you through a really easy way to replace your warp yarn in the project so you can get back to weaving in no time. So here's what you'll need. First of all, you'll need a replacement yarn. I recommend that when you are done winding your project on the warping board, leave your guide string on there so you know exactly what length it is. But measure like a whole length. No matter where you're on the project, it's okay. If you have a few extra inches at the end, it's all good. It's better than agonizing over the length. So just measure a whole new warp yarn for yourself. You'll need some kind of a safety pin or a straight pin. I like a safety pin because it won't catch on the fabric as you're unrolling it later on. And you'll need something to weight it off the back of the loom. I have old film canisters that I just put a couple coins in there, but these are kind of hard to find these days. Use a pill bottle. That's a great idea. What you need is something that has a really tight lid that protrudes a little bit from the body so you can kind of wrap the yarn around it. And you'll see how that works in just a minute, but that's all you need to replace it. So here's how we're going to start. We're going to take our replacement warp thread here, and basically we need to follow the same path from the back to the front. So this is the end that we're going to work with. I'm just going to kind of dangle it off the back for now. And I see that it went through, let's see, this heddle right here. So pull out the old stuff. That's not going to matter now. Put it through your heddle, and then it has to go through the reed. So find the spot that it went through. Let's see, just like that. And we're just going to take this little end here. We're just going to pin it. It is pretty much just that simple. Keep that guy out of the way if you can. And let's see here. Do a little pinning action. Try to catch it in a couple spots. All right, there we go. Now, part of the idea is you want to keep the pin out of the way of where the shuttle will go when you start to work things in. But you're good on this end now. So meet me at the back of the loom and I'll show you how to hang the weights off there. Okay, here we are at the back of the loom. I'm going to show you kind of where everything goes. So this was our broken warp yarn here, and I'm just going to let it dangle off the back, and you kind of unwind it as you progress the project, because we're not going to need this anymore. We can use it for something else later. So now we've got, this is our replacement warp yarn here. Here are our weights, or whatever you're using for weights. At the very end of your replacement warp yarn, put a little circle, slide it on. You want to make sure that it's kind of catches under the lid there. Come around this way, wind, wind, wind. And then when you get closer to the top, here's what I like to do. Let's see if I can explain it. You know, it's one of those things I do intuitively, but I don't teach it all the time. So here we go. Okay, so have your weights in one hand. With the other hand, I want you to make a little loop like this, right? And your canister is going to sneak around the back and through the loop, and you're going to pull just like that. See if it works. Come on. There we go. So this is a nice way. It's just like a little, I don't want to say a slip knot, but it is something that you can easily adjust as you progress and you need to let out more and more inches of your replacement warp yarn. So this then is going to hang off the back and give you equal tension then as you go through the rest of your project. Now, at the very front of the project, you know how we pinned it in place? When you're all finished, take the pin out and just work those yarns so that they share the same space in your fabric, just like you would if you were placing, putting a new color in the weft, how you kind of wrap it around. Just kind of, they'll just disappear into the fabric. And it is just that easy, my friends. It doesn't have to be complicated. Use whatever you can to weight things off the back, and off you go. No big deal. What broken warp yarn? You are good to go. So hopefully that helps the next time you run into a little challenge just like that, because we all have those days, believe me. Have a great week, my friends. Happy weaving. Hey there, my name is Chris Acton with Acton Creative, and this is A Handwoven Experience, episode 80. And in this episode, we're going to talk about some knots. See, weavers and knots, we have kind of a love-hate relationship. We love them because knots allow us to keep very even tension in our project, and we use them in a variety of other places during the dressing the loom process. But they're not our favorite when they show up in unwanted places, such as in our cones or tubes of yarn. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is what to do when you find knots in places you don't want them. So let's start from the top. Whether you're using this style of weaving yarn or this, there's a chance you can find knots in your yarn. And what does that mean? In a perfect world, this half-pound tube will be one yarn and it's wound on, no breaks at all. That is not the reality. The reality is that this is probably two or three pieces that have been spliced together. And everywhere it's spliced, you're going to have a little knot. And we've got a couple applications in weaving where you really, really don't want knots to show up. So we're going to talk about those today and what to do in those instances. So the first spot, as you can guess, is at the warping board. Just a reminder, a warping board, the goal here is to wind on all your warp yarns all the same length and in order, not free. That's what I should add to that equation. So let's say you are working on your project and you find a knot. You've got actually two places at the warping board where knots are acceptable. At the starting peg, wherever you're beginning the project, and at whatever you're using as your last peg at the bottom of the project. We want all the knots to show up either here or here. Well, if they show up, say, right in the middle, we need to address that, because if you have a knot in your warp at your project, the loom, it's going to have trouble going through the heddles and then the reed and get stuck in both those places, and it's going to change the kind of texture of your fabric, and we don't want that. We want it knot free. So here's what we do. See our knot? I didn't pick a great color for this, did I? But there's a knot right in the middle here. Now, in this case, I stopped right when I got to the knot because I want to dress it right away. I don't want to wait till later. It's going to affect everything else. So tackle it head on right when you find it. So in this instance, I was coming from the bottom peg back up. And remember what I said, we can have knots at two different places, the starter peg or back here. So here is where my knot is. This whole stretch of yarn then I'm not going to be able to use. So I want this to move back to this peg here. So here's what I recommend. Take your trusty scissors, just trim it right at the knot as close as you can. And this end just kind of put aside for just a moment so that, let's see, I'm going to put that right there under my scissors, just like that. And then I'm going to kind of work this back to my bottom peg here. Come back, take my end like this. I'm just going to tie those ends together. You know what? I'm going to give that a little trim so it's easier. Let's see here. It's easier to do it when you don't have a camera on you. I'm just saying. Okay, so trim, so do a little knot right there. Okay, so here, now our knot is back at the bottom peg right there. It doesn't have to be exactly there because you're going to kind of you're going to trim those parts anyways, but now you're back in business. You can bring your warp yarn back up and continue on with your project. So that is the first spot where you might find knots that you really have to deal with them. Just remember your knots can be at the starter peg or the bottom peg, not anywhere in the middle. Keep that in mind. The other place that you might have to deal with knots in your tube or cone of yarn is actually as you are doing some weaving. So imagine this is at the loom here and you are winding your yarn with the bobbin winder and there's a knot in there. Now you can address the knot at the bobbin winder if you want, or you can wait till you get to the fabric. And here's what I recommend. Treat it just like you have run out of yarn or changing colors. And so when you're at your fabric here, just take your two ends and just overlap them on either of the edges right there, and it'll work right back into the fabric. The point is to not have knots in your weft yarn going back and forth. So those pesky knots, every so often they show up and put a kink in our plan. But never fear, you've got this. Just give it a little trim, move it back to a safe position, and you can continue on with your weaving. All right, friends, I hope that gave you a couple little nuggets to put in your back pocket for the next time that you run into a knot where you really don't want it. All right, have a great week and happy weaving.